Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Matt Kelly, founder and principal at One Lucky Guitar in Fort Wayne. We know your time is valuable, so we're going to move pretty quick. Hopefully we'll have enough time at the end for a Q&A. First off, I'd like to thank Anna Tragesser at Indian Arts Commission and Abby Chapman and Jackie Schweihert at the Office of Community and Rural Affairs for having us today. Anna, you want to welcome the group?
This is an exciting process of learning about ourselves and identifying those creative people, those creative businesses, and those long-standing creative traditions. And how are you going to share the story of your community with visitors and residents, using that creativity as an asset? I'm really excited for you to begin this journey. Our friends at One Lucky Guitar have done this kind of process for a while, just one slice of what it takes to really sustain and support an authentic creative community. And if you are thinking long-term about how to invest in your creative community, check out the IAC's Creative Community Pathway, which I think Matt is showing now, and link will be in the chat, but you can find it at in.gov/arts, ARTS. This is a tool to help you focus on the important things in this kind of complex process of supporting a creative community. It will help you get advice from professionals, and it will help with professional development for the cultural leaders in your community. And this is a really cool project to be talking about with Jackie and Abby, who are from Okra. So I'm going to kick it over to them. Hey, guys.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Anna, and our colleagues at the Indiana Arts Commission, as well as Matt and our colleagues at One Lucky Guitar. We're really excited to get to be a part of this webinar today, but also just getting to be a part of this conversation, like Anna was saying. So quickly, I just want to say I'm Abby Chapman. I'm the Indiana Main Street Outreach and Organization Manager. And so part of my role is kind of that, exactly, giving the training to our local Main Street programs to be able to tell their story and then other things as well. But quickly, I'll pass it over to Jackie to introduce herself, and then I'll talk a little bit more about Indiana Main Street.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Jackie Schweihert. I'm the Indiana Main Street coordinator for Okra. I really like to think of my role as being the liaison between Main Street America and Indiana Main Street and Okra, and then the local Main Street programs. So Indiana Main Street, as Abby will talk about, is a coordinating program. And so I just kind of keep all the dots connected.
Yeah, Jackie. So we are a coordinating program at the National Main Street Center, or Main Street America. You'll probably hear both names. They've rebranded over the past few years. So we're part of a huge national organization with around, I think it's around now 2,000 or more local programs around the nation. And so we really at Indiana Main Street encourage that economic development and that revitalization of downtown areas. But really at the heart of what our Main Street programs are doing is that Main Street approach, which focuses on 4 different points, which is economic vitality, design, organization, and promotion. So when we talk about design, this really emphasizes that historic preservation and the development of our traditional downtown resources that are already there for you to tap into, and your assets, including that overall design, placemaking, and your local talent. So I'll pass it back over to Jackie real quickly to discuss just the value of this through placemaking and really fostering our spaces and places.
Yeah, thanks, Abby. Just, quickly, that's what we love about the Main Street approach, is that it is holistic and it does comprehensively address those 4 points that Abby highlighted. And, just at Indiana Main Street, we really believe that placemaking provides that set of tools for change that Main Street organizations and any other community organization really can easily learn and apply in their own community. We also love placemaking because it acts as that community-led process that really helps to activate downtowns and community gathering spaces. And when we look at the environment right now in light of COVID-19, looking at the effects of the pandemic on local economies, we know that placemaking and the arts has the potential to really create that long-term vitality and recovery, while also bringing a sense of cohesion to a community in need of healing. So if we want a downtown and its economy to be truly sustainable, we have to help people become invested. What better way to do that than through storytelling and branding and being intentional with our community spaces? And we're just so glad to be here today because we know that partnerships between sectors like the arts and economic development, it's critical to make sure that rural communities can thrive, because we know that by improving quality of life for residents, we can improve economic outcomes and growth. So it's all connected, and we're just so glad to be here. Hello, Main Streets who have joined us today. Can't wait to learn with you.
Excellent. Thank you, Anna, Abby, Jackie. Again, I'm Matt Kelly with One Lucky Guitar. We are a little bit about us. We're a boutique creative agency that specializes in arts, culture, placemaking. Our mission statements: we communicate brand soul. We're up in Fort Wayne. For the last 16 years, our office has been in this kind of near southeast side of downtown warehouse district. It's a block. It's a century-old block that has really found revitalization. We are here, I've been here, like I say, 16 years. There's a commercial photography studio. There's an intimate performance venue, personal training, yoga studios. The community's African-American museum is here, 2 sign companies, and a design build studio. And it's affectionately known as Bricktown. And even without a logo or wayfinding signage or even an official designation, it certainly has a brand. And we're going to talk a whole lot today about what that means. I am joined from our team by Jasmine Behar. She's our digital marketing manager, and Zoe Weaver is behind the scenes with all the activity today. Ideology is always seeking to be 3 for 3. So work with people we trust, both on our own team or vendor partners, the lead consultants that we serve, which is often the case with place branding projects. Work for people we respect. So we value that client agency relationship above all else. And then finally, do work we can believe in. And so a specific area we've really been able to kind of fulfill that ideologies in place branding. I've got a team of 11 that are passionate about community, the community we call home, but also they're energetic travelers with a pretty ferocious appetite for interesting and unique artistic, cultural, musical, culinary experiences. And so that serves us really well in this kind of work. We don't just do placemaking, and so in brand and marketing work, we've got clients really all across the country, even around the world, but with that specific interest in community development, economic development, placemaking. We've served in Indiana, Adams, Allen, DeKalb, Huntington, UCM, Kosciuszko, Noble, Steuben, Wabash, Wells, and Whitley in Indiana, and then Van Wert County in Ohio. We've also become a preferred partner for developers and landscape architects with firms in Chicago, Cincinnati, Philly, and knock on wood, just yesterday afternoon, we put a bid in for a brand development project for a Riverfront district, actually in Delaware. Agenda today. So we're going to go over the tenets of place branding. We'll have 5 tenets we hit on. We'll do a couple deeper dive case studies from OLG's work, inspiration from around the globe, a few pitfalls that we can all look out for, and then the importance of an epic launch. I think just of note, the idea for this presentation was really born from conversations with the IAC and later Okra about the importance of that unique, authentic kind of arts and cultural identity, as Anna, Abby, and Jackie mentioned, and a clear articulation of it. So we found like real alignment with those principles and the work that we do and the work we'll share today. So getting into it, the tenets of place branding. Take notes as you see fit, I suppose, but there will be a recording of the webinar archived for later reference. So the 5 tenets, and we'll dig into each of these, but we're going to get into distinctiveness, authenticity, memorability, co-creation, and then the act of placemaking. Placemaking is a verb. First up, distinctiveness. Distinctiveness rules. The idea here, we'll really start with this kind of idea of being unique against all other options. We say distinctiveness rules because because it does. So place branding is all about the distinctiveness of the place. It's what makes you unique when you're compared to other places or even other opportunities that a resident or visitor may have. There's an idea, it's a couple decades old, it's really catching a lot of traction right now. The idea that we all live in an attention economy. Attention's, so it's kind of more valuable than money at this point. It's why every company, every app, every experience is kind of relentlessly vying for your attention. This webinar is. I am vying for it right now. You might have your phone in one hand and are reading email and just listening to this. But a thing that draws attention is distinctiveness. And distinctiveness, it really comes to life. We feel in the ether. It's like an idea of I think in architecture they call it interstitial space. It's the spaces that you don't see. Distinctiveness is your brand's ideology. It's the core values, the brand promise, which is an idea we'll come back to a lot. And that's what your place promises every single visitor, whether resident or tourist, every single time. When we do brand consulting, our process includes workshops. We call them soul sessions, and they involve a dozen or more interactive exercises that ask participants to kind of really dig deep and peer into the nooks and crannies of their brand soul, ruling some things in and some things out. We'll do one of those exercises today. So this actually comes from Marty Newmeyer, who's a branding guru. It's called the Onlyness Statement. I see some familiar names in the participant list. So I know a couple people have participated in soul sessions with us and done this. The idea of the Onlyness Statement is pretty simple, but that's also what makes it pretty difficult. So it's kind of a fill in the blank here. Your place is the only blank that, and then fill in that second blank. So the first blank really forces you to identify what you are. You have to call your category or the space that you occupy. And then the second asks you to identify what makes you unique, one of a kind, and hopefully irreplaceable. It's what makes you distinct. This is kind of a real way to kind of identify that brand mountain, the place that you can climb to the top of and put your flag on top that only you can say, right? And the thing about an Onlyness Statement, this would be a good screen to do a screen grab of, I suppose, and play around with it, because there's not really one correct answer to this. There actually are probably a lot of correct answers, and as you work through it, try to figure out as many of those answers as you can come up with and keep honing it until you get to kind of like, from a brand mountain perspective, kind of that idea of like the sharpest, highest peak. And that's the one that will matter most to your audience. The next tenet is authenticity at all times. We're going to talk about co-creating here in a minute, but a huge part of all this work is the involvement of stakeholders in the development of a place brand. If we were here in person, I'd ask, like a show of hands of who's experienced a place that they've visited that said it was going to be one thing or offer one thing and then turned out to be something else and kind of maybe anything but what it was saying it was going to be. And that's when the brand promise is broken. you know, when we think of like the promise a brand will make, we would actually say it's worse to break the promise than to not make it in the first place. And to do that, it's really authenticity at all times. We want the brand to be credible. We want credibility rather than credit. So too often in all of this kind of work, I think there's sometimes we'll find that parties involved in a development are maybe thinking more about credit than credibility. So the way that authenticity comes to life here can really reinforce and be a game changer with that. And a big part of that then is the heritage, the cultural history, the natural environment. Those are the characteristics that give a sense of place. You know, it's not just the stories that are told, but sometimes the stories that aren't being told, and you really digging deep to figure out why they're not. I think that's especially important. Abby and Jack, you mentioned if you're Main Street communities, you know, one of the guidelines is to use historic preservation as a tool really for economic development. You know, districts that use cultural history as part of their preservation ethic, and then put a real focus on those authentic stories. When you dig deep and scratch below the surface on that is kind of an acknowledgement of current perceptions. We mentioned those workshops. We'll talk more about engagement, but certainly an awareness of what perceptions are or what people are projecting onto your place. You have to learn what people currently think and say about your brand. And then do the work to analyze why they might think or say those things. What are the actions? What are the policies? What are what is the programming that makes them feel that, the good and the bad? You know, I think if you read a lot about place branding, there's this idea of the true identity of a place, and that's what we're really trying to identify. But you also have to realize that you know, identity is one, subject to change. You know, it evolves over time, and it's going to have kind of debatable or, you know, contested opinions about it. So not ignoring that is a huge part of all this. If you're really a public place, you need to let the audience in. And then this is where we cue a Woody Guthrie thought, but you know, as visitors, the place is your place, right? As a resident, it's my place. This place belongs to me. This place belongs to you. You know, this land is your land, and that's kind of a sing-along that kids learn very young. But if you listen to kind of the original version of that song, it's really not all about, Woody wasn't just kind of rolling in clover about how great things are. It actually had some rough reality in it about who feels welcome in a place, who's made to feel welcome in a place, who feels cared for and cared about. And so I think that is a driver in a brand's story and authenticity is designing, co-creating experiences that, again, are credible, are true, and that matter. Which is a nice segue, I suppose, to memorability, sticky ideas and experiences. So for distinctive and unique and authentic at all times, the experiences that we create can become memorable, right? So memorable experiences are awesome because they you know, they win a little piece of your heart, you know, they win a little piece of your mind. And again, that's so important because we have so many options vying for our resources. You know, if you think about your personal resources, a resident's resources, a visitor's resources, you've got, you know, their time, their finances, but most importantly, their hearts, their emotion. You know, those are scarce resources. So memorable experiences make people want to come back again and again. They make people want to tell their friends and their networks about what they experienced. They want to introduce them to what they experienced. That idea of making ideas and experiences memorable or sticky is to like curate the experience. And again, how important that is in the attention economy. You know, we have sticky up here. That's really from the book Made to Stick by the Heath brothers, Chip and Dan. And they say that the most basic way to get someone's attention is to break a pattern. So as you think about your place, your district, your organization, your event, think about how it breaks a pattern. How is it? In what ways is it unexpected? How does it create like that opportunity to kind of lean in and have someone want to learn more? And when they lean in, how does it welcome them? You know, or how does that welcome that person, or maybe a group of people that have not really felt welcome before? The careful curation of events and programming really can have as much to do with a place's brand as the physical space. So I think that an important part of all this is there can be a pressure on a place or district to really have a full calendar. You know, certainly up until spring of last year, a full calendar of activities. And we would just say that, remember that it's okay to say no to events, happenings that don't align with your place's ideology, because an event that doesn't align, it'll be memorable, but not for the right reasons. And again, I think that goes back to that idea of if you're keeping your brand promise, keep that at the forefront of all kind of events and programming decisions. Co-creation creates unity. We had a lot of arguments about the idea of was it unity or harmony here? So we'll get into kind of the reason we argued back and forth in the office about that, and in my own mind, if I'm being true here. But the thing is that place branding is not a top-down exercise. So the best results we've found come from co-creation. A public place is all of ours and involving many voices in the articulation and development of its brand. So, municipalities, government, business community, of course, and residents. That's how to build a kind of a resilient brand, and that's one that is unique and true, powerful, and then that can endure. I mentioned before our branding workshops are soul sessions, typically 12, 14 stakeholders, rarely less than that, sometimes more. But those folks in the soul session become what we call brand champions, and they'll represent various constituencies and groups within the community. Again, we've got folks in the meeting today that have participated in that. We found that when we build that group, it's not about job title or position of authority. It's really about position of credibility. Again, these are folks, Malcolm Gladwell, I'm just working down the bookshelf here. Malcolm Gladwell on the tipping point, he calls these folks connectors, right? And so the point is that they have that credibility within the group that they represent, and they can give voice to that group, and they can also be our champions as a brand rolls out. We work with them to articulate kind of an inspiring but also realistic vision for the future, the PFS, the preferred future state. Realistic, very often in this kind of thing means sustainable, well, doable and then sustainable. I think we've probably all seen things where there's a rendering that, of a public place that feels like it must be, Disney Paris, and then the community's budget can't support that. And so when the place is built, there can be a sense of deflation. So we try to stay realistic, doable, sustainable from the jump in a brand conversation. We do talk about a lot of things about market focus, audiences, residents, tourists, donors, investors, and benefits, like what the development, the revitalization, that kind of thing. But the brand should empower you to talk to a lot of different audiences, and doing that is bringing their voices in early to be part of the development. The idea of adaptability in the way that it can speak to different audiences, and we'll show examples of that, but it's a really big part of this. Anyway, that idea of brand champions really kind of ensures kind of like the idea of a shared victory. And you guys know, by joining this call, you've probably been in some of these kinds of conversations, but they can be, they can be pretty emotional. I think that's the thing that we really try to focus on, is making sure that's a safe space for people to really share and, again, rally around the direction we're going to go. Other engagement methods that are, obviously beyond 12 or 14 people in a conference room or Zoom, but community surveys, in-person workshops, again, show of hands if you've ever been in a large room with foam core boards and you have a handful of 5 sticky dots that you get to walk around and place on ideas. That kind of stuff still works and is important, and certainly there are, and more than ever, there are digital engagement tools as well. We're doing work in Wabash County right now, and have had to figure out how to do these kinds of workshops through the pandemic, and to have involvement at each stage of it. It's not a branding project as much as a community development project, but how do we have involvement at every stage? Because the very important part is that this doesn't happen to people, it happens with people, right? The brand happens with people, and that's the beauty of co-creation. Placemaking is a verb, I would say. Sadly, for those of us who are in the field of creating brand assets and marketing campaigns and the like, a place's brand is not just about those things. It's not just about your, the ideology and values, or the great design, the hopefully smart marketing. In that intention economy, placemaking is a verb. So the place has to be supported by programming, events, policies, innovations, investment, and even kind of like the symbolic actions that reinforce the brand, right? Those become, all of those things are reasons to believe, right? We're going to say it's one thing, but that's how we demonstrate it. So we bring it to life, and again, fulfill the promise we're making. The reasons to believe have to be ongoing. What do people feel in their gut? Do they feel safe? Do they feel like they belong? Do they feel, say it again and again, engaged, respected, maybe even enlightened, in an arts and cultural environment. And we've found, and one of our case studies will kind of come around how a place brand actually kind of exists and has come to life, in advance of any kind of construction or, resurrection or renovation of a physical space. Gut feelings. I was a little late on the click there. The fill in the blank idea is, when we focus on people and focus on their activities, people make a place. They fill in the blank of what they're going to do there. And in that way, the place becomes kind of what they say it is and how they use it. And again, the product in that way is experience more than built environment. So this is the kind of thing that you really cannot turn your back on. It's a big part of sustainability. We'll get into more of this with the pitfalls when you kind of cease to do some of these things. What can happen there? Get into a couple case studies now. We thought we'd start with one just on the other side of downtown from us, Riverfront, Fort Wayne. And so Riverfront Fort Wayne is really a pretty visionary development in our community. If you know much about Fort Wayne, it's built on the confluence of three rivers, the St. Mary, St. Joe, and Maumee. And the idea of riverfront development had come up in various community planning documents for the last 20 years, really. There was one called Downtown Blueprint, Blueprint Plus, Planet, Allen, it's for Allen County. Each of those plans was built with really robust community input. And the community identified that the rivers were important. It's interesting because we have a festival called Three Rivers Festival, and I would say that roughly half the businesses in Fort Wayne have three rivers in their name, and yet we had turned our backs on our rivers. They'd been really ignored for decades and decades. The city came into money about a decade ago with a thing called Legacy Fort Wayne that was maybe a little more complicated than I understand, but it was the city light and utilities lease. But it created a pool of money for economic and community development, and the mayor and the administration engaged the community again to vote on different ideas that would be important to the community. Riverfront really at that point rose to the forefront and was the most popular idea. And see here on the lower left, this is the Promenade Park. It had opened in 2019, late summer. But Riverfront as a concept was a district, lowercase d district, well before this park was ever built. And that was through events and programming that was publicly run, but also privately run. And so when we started working on the Riverfront Fort Wayne brand, it didn't actually exist as an organization. It was more of an idea. And it was unclear, was it going to be a city department? Was it going to be an entity of its own? Was it going to live within the community foundation? Ultimately, it found its home in the city's Parks and Recreation Department. But the Soul Sessions workshops for this included brand champions that from kind of really myriad stakeholder groups. So the city, county, of course, our CVB, chamber, the regional economic development group as well, which had gotten behind Riverfront, all 11 counties of Northeast Indiana, arts organizations, diverse neighborhoods in the room for that. Fort Wayne is a center of excellence for people with disabilities, with the work of Turnstone and AWS Foundation, and had them engaged about how is this a park for all, rivers for all, and riverfront business leaders and more. And so, and also we were really importantly, I think we were part of like I said, a larger consultant development team on this. So landscape architects, the engineers, all the folks that were working on Promenade Park. So as they did community engagement sessions about the ideas for Riverfront, and this is phase 1 of 4. We're in the midst of now we're in the midst of 2A. The pandemic broke phase 2 into 2A and 2B. But what we found is we were able to piggyback on their community input and engagement and always have brand as part of that conversation. So the launch of the brand happened a full 2 years before Promenade Park actually opened. And so it was essential that we built a brand that created engagement even before there was a physical space. So some of these things that would happen, dragon boat races, the film series, dinner and a movie, bird watching, educational engagement, really built a whole system for that, and then got into the unveiling of the park. and I'll hop over to our website. Let's see, look at some more of this work. So again, giving folks many ways to engage with the brand and kind of plug in and make sure it's part, it was everyone's park. You see our brand platform here, always moving. Kind of play this video on, I don't think we'll have any sound here, but play in the background. As we, like I say, the events and programming made Riverfront come to life before the physical space did, but the brand was coming to life right along with that, with the kinds of things that were curated there. When I show that Promenade Park announcement materials, you're going to see a couple of dates, June of 2019 and then August of 2019. That's what happens when you build on a waterway and had a especially rainy spring. You know, the brand promise of always moving, and that was moving experiences and an energy to it. It also really serves to kind of bring to life some of the challenges that came along with Riverfront development. So, and that is true too with, you know, the park opened in August 2019, 7 months later, the pandemic hits. And so that Riverfront Fort Wayne team, the events and programming team, were challenged with placemaking as a verb, you know, when the ability to gather was kind of taken away from us. What happened events and programming wise, and how could they reimagine everything to still be real and resonant and to bring the brand to life, but in a way that was maybe impossible to have ever planned for. The other important part of this piece was the idea that, like I said, we're in phase 2 now. There are 4 phases. There was kind of that before Promenade Park opened, that was a unnamed phase of its own. And part of that was with the brand piece was, how do we build a brand that is built to grow, to resonate right now, but also to grow. And so we've had pre-built for different developments that are in the future, how they would work with this system. We've got a color palette that has certain things for active outdoors and other things for education and other things for entertainment. But really kind of building with real foresight. And we'll talk about the importance of planning when we get to Pitfalls. The second one we wanted to kind of hit on was Arts Campus Fort Wayne. A really particular reason on this is from a co-creation point of view. So Arts Campus Fort Wayne is an initiative of Arts United of Greater Fort Wayne. See a couple friends on the call. Hi, friends. But it's 7 facilities in a downtown public park with 15 resident organizations in those buildings, and then dozens more that perform in the spaces. The centerpiece is the Arts United Center, which you can see here in the upper middle left, designed by Louis Kahn, a renowned architect, one of the only theaters he ever designed. That the iconic look of those windows are what really inspired the logo. But through the Arts Campus work, and I'll pop over to the website again, play a video while I talk. Here we go. But through the Arts United's thought here was to create kind of marketing consensus that could really elevate the efforts of each of the individual organizations that either call the Arts Campus home or perform there or exhibit there or do educational programming there, and also pave the way for future renovation and expansion. So in this case, actually the Soul Sessions workshops had input from more than 50 of those arts organizations, key members of Arts United's board, leaders, again, from tourism, business communities, adjacent neighborhoods, key donors. And then again, being able to kind of include the brand discussion in public engagement sessions about the potential of an expansion. And even Arts United's kind of annual survey of its donors. Is there such thing as too much input? who knows, right? It was really, really wonderful. It was kind of a, we would refer to it as a supersized soul session that had a broad and massive kind of impact right from launch, right? And includes the implementation. I'll show you here. So by organizations from the arts community, arts and cultural community, really using this lockup, again, elevating their marketing and program, but also elevating the presence and the importance of the arts campus in our community. This is really where the idea of is co-creation creating unity or harmony. I think that we landed on it's harmony for Arts Campus Fort Wayne with this many organizations. An important part of this too is the idea of that brand platform of go, make, believe. And that invited the organizations to use that as well, because it gives them an exciting way to talk about this is a place to go, right? This is a place to see and experience art and performances, but it's also a place to be very hands-on and a place to learn and make. And then the idea of believe, it's a place to become really inspired and illuminated. We're doing pretty good on time. I hope you guys are doing well out there. We'll go through I think some of this inspiration stuff pretty quick. Again, we're recording this. If you want to come back around, and I'll have a screen at the end where you can kind of screen grab the names of all these if you want to look them up on your own. But Cherokee Streets in St. Louis, or Kaye, Cherokee. So this is an eclectic neighborhood that is proudly DIY. It's got, global eateries, a massive Cinco de Mayo festival. But it really, that festival kind of comes to life almost kind of throughout the year. It's got one of the largest concentrations of taqueras and Latino-owned bakeries really in the Midwest. And you can feel it here. I've got their website. That's the only website I'll show from one of these. But that great Cherokee Street logo, it comes to life with these little guys and gals dancing around on that streetscape. But this idea of one street, many states, edgy, awkward, foreign, beautiful, off kilter, off key with that kind of play of Cherokee, but really impactful and has a full kind of palette that comes to life throughout Cherokee Street, which now actually is almost a hub that has spurs that come off of it to the north and south. Rhino Arts District, Rhino is short for River North. In Denver. This district started as in totally grassroots. It was two artists who lived there that wanted to connect arts organizations that weren't collaborating and communicating well. It's really 5 historic neighborhoods represent this district, and kind of the neighborhoods were sticking to themselves. And they said, hey, let's call it River North and let's really work together. That has now become Rhino Art District is a 501c6, but there are 4 groups that really make it up. The Rhino BID, which is a business improvement district, the GID or JID, I guess, which is a general improvement district, and then finally Keep Rhino Wild, which is the 501c3 fundraising arm for it. Really great stuff. I know a lot of you folks are familiar with some of those different classifications and different things that you need to do to be able to develop in the way that you'd like. The Keep Rhino Wild is pretty new, and it might be one of the rules of districts is they eventually all have a movement that is an effort to keep them wild. Broad Avenue Arts District. This is in Memphis. They got a great tagline, from vacant to vibrant in less than a decade. And so Broad Street was actually a little town, a little railroad town called Binghamton that got annexed into Memphis about a century ago, and it had been completely run down, and is now the hot spot. Its aesthetic as that former railroad town comes to life everywhere, and through the businesses and the happenings in the district. Culture Mile in London. I just wanted to include this one quickly. I think it's beautifully designed, but that the adaptability of that design to showcase everything from street art to the London Symphony, which calls it the Culture Mile its home, to education and outreach. Also kind of interesting that it's the Culture Mile in London and not the Culture Kilometer. Yes, this works better as a logo. Buffalo Waterfront's important. We wanted to include, it's really, Buffalo Waterfront is an overarching development, but it actually it's made up of two kind of smaller districts, the Canal Side and Outer Harbor. If you hop to their website, it does have a one big funnel to get you into what's happening there as an entry point. But as you explore each, they really present different experiences. Canal Side is the place for action, and it's where events happen, real concerts. There's an ice rink. It's a place to go on a date. Whereas Outer Harbor is the flip. It's the natural side. So it's a couple hundred acres of green space and wellness trails, and there's a bike park, kayak rentals, all that kind of stuff. But really, those two sub-brands that are obviously related give Buffalo Waterfront kind of the opportunity to market widely and not muddy their message. Keep going quickly here. Waterloo Greenway, this is in Austin, Texas. The one thing, just the folks who did the brand work here, Bruce Mao Design of Toronto, who are kind of buddies of ours, they have a saying that I'll just quote them on it. It's our identity as people is informed by place, and vice versa. Our identity as a place is informed by the people. So for time, I'm going to bypass some of their process here, but it's worth checking out the Waterloo Greenway website and its history. A couple that maybe are a little bit more approachable, less London and Austin. Quincy, Illinois, town of 40,000 on the west side of Illinois. The district was, formed 3 decades ago when as Uptown Quincy, when a group of concerned leaders and residents felt the trend of people kind of pulling out of downtown and the central business district. And so it is today the community's premier, I think, destination for dining, shopping, entertainment. It's volunteer. It's got two board members, but run by a nonprofit, 2 staff members, but run by a nonprofit board. It's a Main Street America program, as Abby and Jackie mentioned. The board is not huge. Some of these boards can be huge, but they have 22 committees. If you go to their website, 26 action plans, and they do over, in 2019, they did 65 events, which is pretty impressive. Finally, last sample is Ames, Iowa, downtown Ames, 66,000 people north of Des Moines. It does benefit from being home to Iowa State, but downtown Ames is the public-facing brand for Ames Main Street Cultural District. You see on the lower right. And we wanted to include it because it was an important rebrand for them a couple years ago, because as downtown Ames, I'll read their statement. Downtown Ames is more than just our main street. We are Douglas, Kellogg, Burnett, Clark, and 5th Street. We are Bandshell Park to the east and Wheatsfield Cooperative to the west. We are the heart of Ames. And people found, end quote, people found that Ames Main Street was too limiting. It really made, that's the operational organization. But when they talk to residents and tourists, they present as downtown Ames. You can see the way that a real graphic style was built here that allows them to, again, have adaptability and resiliency. 1250. I'll go quickly through some pitfalls. Hope everyone's doing well. Plan the process early. Plan who you want to engage, when you want to engage them. If you start the engagement too late, it's already too late. You should, as part of the planning process, anticipate pushback, concerns, make room for it, outline approval processes, make sure everyone agrees on approval processes, skip shortcuts. you know, I might even have do I have it there? Yeah. Okay. So you can't skip that important kind of brand soul piece before there's any graphic design or those kind of things happening. The ideology, the positioning, that's the central nervous system. This is important too, identity versus image. So there is a distinction between a brand identity, which we're going to call, the marketing pieces, the graphic identity, the language, and brand image, which the brand image is someone's gut feeling, the experiences they've had. And so a new identity cannot fix a bad image, right? And that will happen if you make a big to-do about a new identity and haven't addressed the things that caused a bad image. Expect a backlash. And then lastly, anywhere USA, this idea is the brand has to be true, right? It has to feel right. If it feels like it can be anywhere, then it's unsuccessful, right? Go back through some of our best our examples or rewatch this, but all of those examples we had are definitely not anywhere USA. And then last is abandonment. I talked about this before with memorable experiences, but you have to have the resources to launch the brand, but also to support it and express it, and a team. When a brand is abandoned, again, the promise is broke. That's a good segue to the importance of an epic launch. This is an idea for not just place branding, but for all of life, is to sell the problem, not the solution. I think that all of us too often will reveal and celebrate the solution, and if we haven't outlined the problem that it's solving, i.e. its why, then again, we can expect misunderstanding, we can expect a backlash. Early in the process, when you're in your PR and your social media and your other channels, when you talk about why something is going to change or that you're working on changing it, sell the problem, and communicate your objectives. And so when the solution is revealed, its why is well and widely understood. An experience concept. So with launch, it's beyond design, marketing, language, physical space. What is the experience concept? We say smart and epic doesn't have to mean that it's massive and that there are thousands of people there. Epic is the impact, and the impact should be positive. Of course, remember the tenets in your launch: distinctiveness, authenticity, memorability, co-creation, whether unity or harmony. And this is where placemaking is really a verb. After a launch, monitor, right? Monitor awareness, loyalty, engagement. And that can be pretty scrappy. I know that monitoring can be really expensive with certain forms of research, but certainly just social media engagement, word of mouth, monitor and measure. When we're talking, I guess, experiences here, I came across this as we were putting this together, and really want to, I guess, leave with this quote, which means a great deal to us in the work that we do. Ralph Waldo Emerson is credited with this. What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you're saying. One more time. What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you're saying. And that is one thing that we lead with place branding, is that the brand is not going to solve the problem that may be caused by the actions or the image, but it's part of a comprehensive plan and policies and engagement that can overcome that. Few folks to thank here. So Arch United, Riverfront, Fort Wayne, all the folks that we featured here and the agencies that did their work. Marty Newmar, a couple places to look for more resources: Place Brand Observer and the Project for Public Spaces are great resources. We do want to thank IAC and Okra for having us. 12:55. Try to maybe slide in for some questions. Oh yeah, if you want to hit us up with anything, since I left us 4.5 minutes, you can email us at info@oneluckyguitar.com, or if you want to learn more about what we do, oneluckyguitar.com/place-branding. Let's see if we have any questions.
Yeah, I can help you here, Matt. I've been scouring this, So I think you had shared this a couple of examples of this, but maybe can you give one more example about some of the bumps in the road that we had to navigate? People want to be forewarned about the hiccups they may encounter in this type of activity.
Yeah, I think the biggest ones for us were, and probably earlier on, maybe in our, when we first started doing this kind of work, which would have been 15 years ago, doing some work with our downtown improvement district. But what was really, we had a visionary leader of that organization, and came to us and challenged us with helping to create some events and programming for the district, and we did it in a very insular way. He was our direct client. We had traveled at that time quite often to Austin, Texas, and had seen certain kinds of musical experiences that we wanted to bring back to our community, and did so. They were tremendously successful, and we had great experiences, but it also felt like we hadn't really engaged enough of our community in what they might, what might be important to them, what would make them feel welcome, and it felt, in hindsight, maybe it felt too exclusive in some ways, or too much of one kind of silo. And as we've grown to work with longer lasting, more enduring projects, spaces, clients, we have broadened that engagement. I guess I just can't say enough about doing the hard work early on of who do we want to hear from, and how do we ensure that we do hear from them. And again, that's from a branding perspective, but it's also, I mentioned the work in Wabash County, the work we're continuing over in Van Wert is less about branding right now and more about the vision for some revitalization and engaging so many different populations in what they hope for their community.
One of the questions that I think we can kind of answer a little bit with 11:58, 2 minutes. Can you talk maybe, I should read the question instead of just interpreting, but sorry, I lost my scroll. Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you talk about the how the individual entities, I think, Arts Campus is a really great example, but how do individual, like an artist studio, use the kind of branding and the importance of in bringing them in and then empowering them to use that branding themselves?
Yeah, so certainly from a deliverable standpoint, we will build toolkits for brands that have usage guidelines, but that are also, in the Arts Campus example, pretty open source, really. The Arts Campus, is kind of owned by all of us in that way, and really engagement out front, spreading the word about it, the responsiveness of an organization like Arts United to folks who are reaching out and want to be part of that is a really big piece. And I think, again, the early involvement in like what is the vision here, and having folks have voice in that and be able to kind of rally behind it can create, I think, a lot of momentum and rowing in the same direction. For us, that we learned that very early on with work that we did for the Northeast Indiana Regional Partnership, which is 11 counties that would compete with each other for economic development, and to rally behind we're stronger together. We helped navigate that process, and now are able to kind of apply that to arts and cultural entities. Hope everybody's been having fun. We really appreciate, I'll leave this up here again. So oneluckyguitar.com/place-branding. Really appreciate you spending time with us. Thanks again, Anna, Jackie, Abby, for having us. Thanks, Jasmine, for hooking this up in the first place, and Zoe for making it run. Have a great spring, everybody.